Hey everyone. Hi Sam. Can everyone hear me okay? How are we doing? I hope everyone's well and having a good day. I think we've got about 20 people joining us in this workshop today. So I'm just going to wait for a few minutes and allow people to filter in. I suppose, hi Jasmine, hi Sam. Uh, I think there's a fair bit of a delay actually between what I say and I don't think I can change that unfortunately now. But yeah, there is a bit of a delay between what I say and you hearing it. So what I'll do is every couple of slides or so, I will just take a quick pause, give people the opportunity to ask questions, and yeah, then we'll take it from there. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about how to write a great developer CV, sort of things to include. A lot of it will seem probably common sense for people that have written CVs before. There's going to be a few things that are going to be specific to being a software developer, though, and obviously how we can include portfolio pieces on that CV and create a great first impression when people do see our work. So that's going to be the stuff that we've done at Northcoders, so project phase, Northcoders news, but also any stuff that we've done in our own time. So people may have that worked on other coding projects or side hustles perhaps when they were on the course or before, or additional things that they end up taking on, after the course and also further down the road as well. Cool, so I'm just going to put my notes on here. Can everyone hear me? Is the sound levels okay? Still waiting for a couple more people. All right, cool. Page video won't load properly for me. Is anyone else having any issues? Has anyone had a similar problem that Alexandra's had? Could you try reloading it for us, please, Alexandra, and let us know if you have any luck? You're having a bad tech day, Alex. All good for me. Grand, that's very, very kind of you, Jasmine. Um, cool. Are we waiting for many more people, or do we have pretty much the whole group with us? Just before we get started, I'll just quickly repeat the summary of the session. Um, like I was saying, uh, yeah, feel free to ask questions at any point. I will be taking breaks every couple of slides or so to address questions that people have. Um, feel free to ask them at any point. There's no such thing as a bad question. I sometimes find as well writing a question down, be it on a piece of paper or in the live chat, is a good way of remembering things that you want to ask that you might otherwise forget. We'll have some time for a Q&A session at the end as well, not just about CVs, but just more generally any sort of career or support related questions that you might have as well. So yeah, happy to cover all that with you. Cool. Right, what time is it? Okay, so we'll give another 30 seconds and then we'll get started. Cool. So, as I mentioned earlier, some of what we'll be going through today will be common sense to anyone that's written a CV. A lot will be slightly different though, because what we're trying to do is demonstrate our skills as a developer. And one of the really cool things about being a developer is it's very easy to showcase your skills. I'm just quickly getting it looks a little bit smudged. Cool. It's very easy to showcase what you can and can't do on a portfolio. One of the great things about having things like GitHub pages, and other places that we can hold stuff like that. Cool. So one of the important things that I want people to bear in mind throughout this session, but also going forwards as well, not just on CVs, but just applying to jobs more generally, the importance of having a story that's personally unique to you. So talking about talking about why we got into software development, where we're currently at, and where we see ourselves going as well. As with any bootcamp graduate or someone fresh out of university, there's only going to be so many examples of our work that we can draw upon to demonstrate what we have done before. So what people will be looking for really is your motivations, what you're looking for out of a role, and where you see yourself going forwards. So really try and paint a story about who you are, why you want to do this, and the type of organisation you're looking for afterwards. You've probably done some sessions already. We've talked a little bit about that sort of thing. We'll be doing sessions going forward as well, where we'll also discuss that with you. Cool. So yeah, like I mentioned, common sense stuff about CVs. What we want to do is try and keep them to no more than 2 pages. We want all the tech related stuff on the front page as well. So by that I mean list of the technical skills that you have as a developer. We also want the Northcoders section on there as well as your portfolio pieces. It's always good to keep the portfolio pieces you've done on the course, so Northcoders news as well as project phase. Inside that Northcoders section, it contextualizes where you did them, when you did them, and why you did them, as well as any sort of technologies, and really make it clear what technologies you use on each project as well. That way, if you're going for a front-end role, or maybe something that you're using React in, it's really easy for people to pick out the portfolio piece that they need to look at to see your work with that technology. One of the things to always consider as well is the person reading your CV might have never heard of Northcoders. Don't assume that people know what Northcoders is, or perhaps even a coding bootcamp, right? You've got to remember that the first person that sees your CV might not be the technical person at that organization. It could be a recruitment or a careers person that looks at 50, 100 CVs a day, right? So it's really important we don't take anything for granted, we don't assume any knowledge, and like we said, we make it as easy to pull out all the relevant bits, okay? So I'm going to show you a few different examples of CVs, and I'm going to show you an example CV that I've put together as well. Cool. So as with any CV, readability is always important. Oh, there we go, cool. So we want a little summary about you in the little top section here. So this is where we're going to tell that story. So what we were doing before, who we are now. So something along the lines of junior software developer, junior full stack developer, entry-level software developer, recently graduated the coding bootcamp Northcoders. Previously worked, well, let's say this person here, for 10 years as an electrician, looking for a software development role where I can continue my learning, something like that, right? Something personal to you, right? So maybe, yeah, nothing too specific about the type of company you want to go to. It's much better that you make a decision about the type of company that's a good fit for you, be it reading about that company, doing an interview with them, building that idea of the organization, rather than someone writing you off because you've said, I want to be a React developer, and perhaps it's a full stack role, or perhaps it's a JavaScript developer role. Again, if the first person who reads our CV is a HR generalist, they might not know that React is a JavaScript framework, and that if you can do one, you can probably do the other, right? So yeah, don't make any assumptions and keep it on point, and make sure, yeah, you don't get too specific with the type of role that you're looking for. What we then ask you to do is very similar to what this person's done on the right hand side here, skills. Create a list of the technologies that you know. So obviously it's going to be everything you've done on the Northcoders course. It's also going to be some stuff that you're going to be doing in project phase, and perhaps some bits and pieces you've done in your own time as well. What I suggest is, and again, I will send across the sample CV after this that demonstrates how to do this, but have subcategories of like front end technologies, back end technologies, testing, and yeah, just make it really easy for people to pick out that information. If you've used certain frameworks, be them CSS, JavaScript as well, include them. Yeah, like if you've used, say, for example, Bootstrap or Bulma or some CSS framework, include that on there as well. Because again, if someone has a checklist which is simply asking them, does this person have experience with Bulma, and you haven't included that on there, you might be missing out on the opportunity for an interview, right? Yes, and I would generally suggest having the summary at the top, and then either if you're doing it in one column format, have those skills underneath. And again, that can be stuff that you might have done outside of Northcoders. You've got to remember you're going in for a junior role, right? No one's expecting you to be an expert in Python or whatever, right? People, what they're really interested in is getting to know your motivations. So why you learn that language, how maybe your experience with it fared compared to JavaScript, and is it something you'd be interested in doing again? It's a conversation point. It's conversation starter more than anything, right? What we then ask you to do is include your work experience straight afterwards, chronologically. Reason being is it keeps all of that technical experience at the front. And the reason Northcoders goes under work experience rather than education is, again, it just means all the technical stuff is on that first page. And it's really easy for people to pull out. So what we ask you to do is, like we mentioned before, don't make any assumptions about what people know about Northcoders. Explain in detail what the bootcamp is, the skills that you've learned on it, so not just technical skills, but the soft skills that you've learned, pair programming, using Git, version control. I mean, you're all in an interesting position where you can talk about working remotely in teams as well, and using Visual Studio Code to work remotely, having to be really good and disciplined with your commits, all that sort of stuff as well, right? And after you've done that summary, like we mentioned, include those 2 portfolio pieces. So the first one's going to be Northcoders News. It's going to be a summary of what Northcoders News is, so the purpose of the application, and then we're going to have links to the hosted version of it, and also the GitHub repo. We always ask that you put the hosted version up first and make it really clear which one is the hosted version, because once or twice, and it's not that many times in the entire history of Northcoders, but once or twice, recruiter has come back to us and said just simply it doesn't work because they've clicked the GitHub repo, not realizing that the other link is the hosted version, and just seen a load of code and not understood what to do with it. They've just assumed it's not working. So don't fall into that trap. Always have the hosted version first and make it really clear which one's which. When you do include any URLs on your CV, so this is your portfolio pieces, but also things like your GitHub profile, email address, LinkedIn, if you want to include that on there as well, always include the entire URL. So it's really easy for people to copy and paste that URL into their browser. What sometimes happens, and you can see this in Slack, is if you have embedded links in and you're trying to view a PDF in that piece of software, it doesn't work. In some corporate environments, computers are quite locked down, as is the software that they can and can't use on the computer. They might not be able to open an embedded link. So make it as easy as possible for people to see this stuff. Let people copy and paste it. So yeah, after the Northcoders News, you'll have your project. So again, talk about the summary of it, so what it is, why you decided to make it, the technologies that you used on it. Again, it's really good to break these technologies down by things like front end, back end, testing, that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, have the hosted link and then the back end version as well. When your graduation videos go live as well, include the links to those videos on your CV as well. It's a really unique and cool way of showing people, your presentation skills and a little bit more detail about some of the technical decisions that you made while working on the project and why you made what you made. Cool. Obviously, going a little bit further back, we'll be talking about previous roles that we've done. The general rule is the further back we go historically, the less detail you need to go into. As you notice on this CV that we've got in front of here, this person has used bullet points If you want to do that, it's completely fine. What I'm always going to suggest in CVs and what I like to see, I've had to read a lot of CVs in my time, is if people talk about key skills that they've got, like working in a team or working to deadlines or stakeholder engagement, communication skills, always have an example backing up why you're good at that skill. It gives so much more context. Anyone can say that they're great managing or working with teams. It's a very different thing being able to actually back that up with an example, right? Um, if there's any roles that you've got, and again, I'm going to show examples of this, but yeah, um, after the Northcoders bit that you don't think are too relevant to what you're going for after the course, you can either condense it into just a couple of lines, or perhaps just even a job title, company, date to, date from, or what some people will do is if they bounce around quite a few jobs in a couple of years, they'll just put various, let's say, customer service or various sales or various retail roles, including, and then there's just little subheadings. Literally, can just be one line again. Just a quick summary of each of those companies. Cool. Like I said, there's going to be examples of this further down. Include personal interests as well. As you can see, this person's got hit down here: astronomy and rock music. I don't know how much use you get out of a telescope right now. Well, I guess if you've got a garden, you might be all right. Unfortunately, I don't. Then, yeah, include that. People want to hire people, right? And it shows that you have other interests, passions. You're not just, I suppose, a robot. And if there's other technical stuff that you do in your own time, maybe you've worked on some websites for friends, family, maybe some interactive art project you've done. So this is a great place to include it. Like I said, full URLs, but also other bits and pieces. Are you into? I'm just trying to think what people would be doing at the moment, being stuck inside. Knitting. Do you compose music? Do you? I don't know. Are you big into racing sims or something like that? It's just it fills it out and it makes it easier for people to visualize sitting next to that person. Well, when we do eventually all go back and working side by side with this person, it makes you seem like more of a human. I generally suggest education comes after experience, and then that interests bit goes at the very bottom if you're keeping it all in a one column format. If you do go one column format, I would suggest if you have a portfolio site, sticking that link up at the very top, so underneath where Frank's put his name, just here. That helps when I point on the right screen, and also have the GitHub link there as well. Make it really easy for people to pull out your GitHub and see the work that you've been doing. Again, not just after the course, but any bits and pieces that you're doing in your own time immediately afterwards. Keep coding, keep working on projects. It's a great opportunity to demonstrate your I suppose your discipline and drive, but also any other technologies that you pick up and after the course as well, you can showcase those skills as well, right? Okay, great. So moving on to the next CV, as you can see, it's very similar. So this person's a PHP developer. So what I would suggest is, what I would change with this CV is the points that we discussed in the very first one. So I would go in a little bit more detail about junior developer, recently graduated the coding bootcamp Northcoders, a little bit of a description about who you are, so what you were doing before the course, how long you were doing it for, and a little bit just about where you see yourself going afterwards, and then have these technical skills underneath as a separate bit. So they've got skills here, right? I would say have that here, and then drop the work experience down. But yeah, cool. And as you can see here, it's completely unnecessary to have references on your CV. You don't even have to write references available on request. What I would suggest as well is generally don't include your location on a CV. It's unnecessary, and it could end up meaning you're maybe discounted or not considered for a role that you were perhaps open to relocating for, or who knows with the way the world's going, maybe everyone's going to be working remotely. So yeah, it's just not necessary on there. There's better information you can include on there, like I said, GitHub and a portfolio website if you have one. Cool. I'm just going to give it 30 seconds for it to catch up and then see if people have any questions. Okay, yeah, while we are waiting, just a quick mention as well, don't have any gaps in your CV. It's an instant red flag for recruiters, any sort of hiring managers, And what will probably end up happening is you'll end up speaking about what a gap in your CV is when you go across an interview. It's so much better just to put something just like career break or studying or traveling or uh, gap in work or something like that. If you leave a gap, people might assume the worst, and assume you went to prison for some horrible crime or something like that. So yeah, just put some. Anything's better than nothing, right? Um, if it's just like a month or two, it's completely fine. But yeah, if it is say 3 6 months, just say yeah, career break, traveling, studying, something like that, right? It just basically means when you do have that 40 minutes, that hour where you have an interview, you can spend more time talking about interesting stuff like technology rather than that time when you went on holiday to Southeast Asia or whatever. I didn't. Sounds nice, but yeah, you know what I mean. Cool. So yeah, any questions at this point? Just give you a few seconds, and then we'll move on. Cool. Okay. So yeah, nothing so far. Like I said, there will be time at the end to ask questions. Let's move on. Okay, so we've got a question here from Gareth. Is it worth delaying looking for jobs if able to in order to build up our portfolio, or is it better to do it at the same time? I would suggest, Gareth, if you see a job that think looks interesting, why not apply? What are you gonna lose, right? At the end of the day, with everything that's going on in the world, it is going to be a competitive jobs market. Um, you don't lose anything by applying. If it was me, I'd much rather apply for something and know I wasn't successful than not apply and never know, right? So it's one of those where, yeah, I just keep looking for stuff, keep applying for things. As I don't think you're in the careers channel yet, or I think maybe Lucy's just added you. But yeah, stuff is still going up on there. We're having 1 to 2 jobs being put on the board every week in Manchester, and there's stuff going up in Leeds as well regularly. Um, yeah, if you see something that looks like it could fit out there in the wide world, apply to it. I strongly encourage you to. It's always better to try and fail than never try at all, right? Yeah, good question. And obviously, just keep working on stuff after the course. Just keep coding, keep working on projects, and put this stuff up on your GitHub as well. Again, you're a junior developer. No one's expecting finished, pixel perfect designs and full applications and websites, right? But just keep regularly adding to that commit history. You've got that lovely green bar where people can see everything that you've been doing. And yeah, any projects that you are working on, regularly add to GitHub and to your CV as well, or portfolio website if you have one. Cool. So yeah, just before we move on to this little summary section, cool. So just a point about first impressions on CVs. Attention to detail is obviously hugely important as a developer. If we have a single sort of comma or parentheses out of place, it can cause our code not to work right. So one of the things people will be looking for in your CV is attention to detail. So yeah, just really make sure that you have thoroughly proofread it. You're happy with the grammar, the spelling, everything makes sense. It flows and it's coherent, and yeah, it's something that you think is a great representation of you and what you're capable of, right? So proofread it and make sure you are really happy and it is the polished finished product, because that piece of paper is the first impression of you, or PDF or whatever it is, right? I don't think too many people print CVs off these days. But yeah, like I said as well, the first person who reads your CV is a very good chance they might not be technical, so be mindful of the language and the terminology that you use. So yeah, I think it's only about a third of Northcoders graduates actually use the specific stack that we teach, so full stack JavaScript, when they go across to their first job. So don't call yourself like a JavaScript developer, right? Because you might end up not being considered for a role because the first person who vets your CV says, "Oh, this person said they're a JavaScript developer. They can't do Python or PHP or Ruby or whatever. So yeah, and yeah, like I said, don't talk too specifically about the type of role or company culture that you're looking for after the course as well. It's much better based on what you've written in your CV, right? It's better to put yourself in the driving seat in that position of control, making that decision rather than them doing it on your behalf, right? Um, cool. So any points that we missed on here? Yep. Okay, we talk about that. Talk a little bit about your background. Yep. One of the main reasons companies will choose to hire from Northcoders rather than people straight out of university is because you come with that worldly experience and the ability, I suppose, to get things done. You've got a little bit more life experience, and yeah, companies like that. So feel free to talk that up. Even if it's not a technical role or anything too specific to or related to what you'll be doing after the course, it's still valuable, right? You've still got a career history and skills that you bring in addition to just being a developer, right? Cool. Other specific examples. This shouldn't take too long. Aim for one paragraph maximum. So yes, this is the summary at the top we're talking about on here. So this is this first paragraph. Cool. So yeah, we talked about technical skills. Yeah, so again, JavaScript, any frameworks, libraries that you've used, include them under there. Database technologies as well, HTML, CSS. Oh, if you use any other related technologies as well, be it at Northcoders or just in your own time or in a previous role, include them on there as well. So we've obviously got Photoshop on there. Another one might be Adobe Studio. I'm not sure. I'm not a very visual or design person, but things like Balsamic, if you use that as well, which is a UX wireframing tool for designing front ends, Unity Engine, anything like that that you've got on there. Again, like you can see, this person's done down here, Photoshop Illustrator. It just sets you apart a little bit, and yeah, it's a great thing to talk about. Again, no one's expecting you to be an expert on Photoshop or Illustrator, but it's well worth putting on there because it's a conversation to have when you do go across to a role or an interview rather. If you're using technology you just touched on or just learned, yeah, you can put good basic understanding of it if you feel more comfortable doing that. Yeah, and it makes you unique, not just obviously North Coast grads, but there is other boot camps out there. There is obviously computer science grads as well. So yeah, it helps you stand out a little bit. Cool. And like you're all going to have unique things on there that you've done in project phase as well. So make sure to update your CV once you finish project phase and also any other projects that you worked on in your own time as well. Cool. So in terms of work experience and volunteering that you've done, like we mentioned before, you don't need to be too specific with dates. It doesn't need to be the exact month, the exact day that you started or finished the job. You can just say month and year. People aren't going to go back and check. They've got better things to do. If there is any significant gaps in there, like say for example you've got 3 to 6 months between a role, just say career break or something like that. It's fine. Always use specific examples when talking about things you achieved in the role. Yeah, so this is going back to what we were saying before. So say. If you're talking about teamwork or communication or management, maybe you talk about a specific time when you demonstrated those skills, or maybe something you're especially proud of, or a reason you were trusted with those responsibilities. For jobs that are more career-based, been a number of years, can put a bit more detail on what you did. So yeah, progression is always a great thing to talk about as well in the role. So if you got promoted or if you got given more responsibilities in your time there, it's great to see. Shows ambition. Like we said, filling gaps. Put Northcoders in experience, so like we were saying, because it's going to be the most relevant thing to what you're doing immediately after the course. The reason we're doing Northcoders is because the likelihood there's any prior education we had probably isn't too relevant to being a software developer. So yeah, get that Northcoders bit front center right at the top. I was talking about maybe roles that you didn't want to go into too much detail about earlier. So we've got a couple here. So as you can see, Joe Blogs Bakery. This person worked as a retail assistant between November 2012 and April 2013. Just one little line about what they did, and then maybe they were working in Oxfam for a couple of months just after they finished school. And yeah, just wanted to put that. That is totally okay. If you want to dedicate more space in your CV to talking about Northcoders, talking about your portfolio piece, or another role that you've done that you want to talk about more, it's completely fine. It's completely fine. Like I said, the general rule is roughly The further back we're going historically, the less detail we need to include. But yeah, if you weren't in a role for very long or you don't think it's very relevant, yeah, that's not a hard rule. You can. There's a bit of flex in that. Cool. So yeah, here's an example of what that Northcoder section should look like. Cool. Like it says here, please reword the description below. One of the most frustrating piece of feedback we've had from hiring partners for us and myself is when a hiring partner says to us, and we do look at them and we obviously do flag this out. And this is the reason we do this is because it's not a good look for you and it's not a good look for us if they end up with 6 CVs that all have exactly the same description of Northcoders, right, and certain skills. What I'd suggest is maybe again, highlight examples of specific sprints, specific projects that you thought you did really well on, and you demonstrated some of these soft skills. So pair programming, daily stand-ups, agile, communication, version control, all that sort of stuff, right? And obviously bring up the final projects as well, because that's going to be the closest real-world example you've got to working on a proper software project, because that's kind of the purpose of these final 3 weeks, working in that style and getting used to that collaborative way of working in a slightly larger team. Daily stand-ups, utilising Trello as your Kanban board, and then obviously the presentation skills at the end you've demonstrated. Cool. As you can see, you've got the Northcoders projects here. So it's got a description of what the Northcoders news is. I would suggest going into some more detail about this, some of the features and functionalities of it, how all these things are connected together. So yes, you've got a RESTful API. You've got a database on there as well. You're using, I think, Connects these days, right, to communicate with that SQL database. And the front end, how it all works. And like we were saying before, I think it's better to have these, and I will give you an example of how to do this, but have all these technologies separated by front end, back end, testing, all that sort of stuff, right? Cool. So as you can see, you've got the hosted version here, top link, full URLs, people can copy and paste it into their browser. We've got the front end, GitHub portfolio, the GitHub repository, and then the back end repo as well. And as mentioned, final project on there, it's fine to include something like this as a placeholder for the time being. I would suggest obviously including a lot more about the application and project, because this is your opportunity to talk about your way of working, right? Why you chose the technologies you did, how you spiked them out, and how you made business decisions, right? Time is money in software development. Why did you decide a certain technology was the best direction to go with rather than maybe something you've used on the course, right? Anything you've used in the course, you can just hit the ground running making something with it, right? Why did you think it was a better use of your time to learn new technology, right? Which maybe took 3-4 days longer to get started on what is quite a short project phase, right? Cool. And again, full hosted link, repo, and then once you do get that final video showing the presentation, include that on there as well. Cool. Yeah. Education, there's no need to go into too much detail on this. Keep it simple, keep it chronological, include degree and A levels if applicable. Few hiring partners do ask for A levels. There isn't many though, to be honest. And if your education is non-UK, please put the equivalent grades if you know them. Cool. So we spoke about skills and interests earlier. Talk about any, I guess it's very relevant at the moment, but yeah, just talk about any skills that you've developed, any interests that you've got, and yeah, just demonstrate that you have interests outside of Northcoders as well. If you regularly listen to maybe tech podcasts, or you were previously attending talks or part of the meetup events community, put that on there as well, right? What people are looking for these days, especially for some of the salaries that developers go for, is people that are more than just 9-to-5 developers. If you're excited about new technologies, new developments in the industry, and you will go away and research them, be it by going to events and listening to what other people are saying, or reading documentation, creating small projects in your own time, right? So yeah, it just shows you as a more rounded developer who's going to bring more to the table than just the minimum of what's required for you in that role. You know, you're going to bring more more to the team, right? Okay. Do we have any more slides? Cool. So yeah, summary. And yeah, happy to do some Q&A after this. As I mentioned, I will send you a PDF sample CV, which is a developer one specifically for Northcoders grads. Do include full URLs to those portfolio pieces, same for your GitHub, LinkedIn, email address, anything like that. Mention any relevant extracurricular activities you've done. Keep it to 2 pages. If you are struggling with that, let us know. We can give you some advice. Like I said, if there's roles that you think aren't relevant on there, it is fine just to put them in simply one line, or if it is a lot of roles in a similar industry, just say various, for example, customer service roles, including, and then maybe just 1 or 2 companies. Include phone, telephone number, yep, email address on there. Yeah, that's totally fine. Like I said, proofread. It's attention to detail, so important. Don't leave gaps in career history. Anything's better than nothing. And yeah, like we were saying before, don't be too specific about what it is you're looking for in the CV. That's up to you. They don't need to know exactly what it is you're looking for. It's better for you to make that decision after speaking to someone, right? Cool. Yeah. Do people have any questions? We'll try and start a little bit more focused with questions about CVs, and then once we've exhausted them, we'll just go generally more questions that people might have about hiring processes, interviews, the industry, anything like that. Happy to answer any questions while you've got me. Okay. Cool. So just give a few seconds for the stream to catch up. Come on, I'm sure there must be some questions people have, right? Like I said, we can start with CV ones, but they don't just have to be about CV writing. It can be anything careers related. I've still got another 20 minutes in my calendar, so yeah, I'm happy waiting. Cool, Mustard, yeah, says, do you recommend covering letters? Yes, generally speaking. Most hiring partners we work with will ask for covering letters from people. It helps differentiate between the different applicants, and it gives you an opportunity to talk a little bit about yourself and why you think you are a great fit for that company and why you wanted to apply in the first place, right? It helps you stand out. So yeah, most hiring partners we work with do ask for covering letters as well. If a company does want a covering letter, we will always tell you. And yeah, if you've not heard from us that they want one, you can assume that they don't. What's the verdict on QR codes instead of in addition to links? I think it's completely fine including QR codes, Nick. What I would suggest though is bear in mind that most of the time your CV will be going across to companies as a PDF, so they'll already have stuff on there, and it just means they have to get out another device to. I don't know. There might be screen readers these days that can click through QR codes, but yeah, otherwise I have to bring out another device to open that link with their phone. So yeah, it's a cool thing to include on there, and it's a little bit different. I do like it, but yeah, include a full link as well always. Sam asks, is it worth having a portfolio website or mostly sticking to traditional CVs or some combination? I think both is totally fine. I think making a portfolio website is going to teach you some valuable skills. It's going to teach you, obviously, some design. It's going to help you practice as well as your JavaScript, your HTML and CSS. And I think as well, it's an interesting project to work from inception. So design, layout, writing user stories, to actually creating it and getting it hosted as well. And again, you can talk about some of the stuff that you've learned while making it as well. So yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily rush out today and start working on a portfolio website if you haven't started one. There's no rush. But yeah, certainly at some point it's a good learning experience to do. And yeah, you can host them so easy with GitHub pages these days. So yeah, it's definitely something worth considering. Cool. Any more questions from anyone? Is there anything people would like to know with regards to the tech industry and of COVID-19 and the lockdown and everything like that? Any sort of concerns or I don't know, points of interest or anecdotes they would like to hear? Apologies for the squeaky chair. Ricky K says, does it make a difference when applying for jobs if we make a portfolio website using React? Um, I'm not sure if it would necessarily make a difference. What I would suggest is trying to maybe use something new. It doesn't have to be a completely different framework or library. So you don't necessarily have to go out and you start using Angular or Vue. But yeah, you maybe use a different React package or library in addition, just to add something else to your skill set. Or maybe, if you've got a little bit more time, try doing something with TypeScript, for example. And yeah, if you do work on any projects in your own time, outside of Northcoders, be realistic about the scope of it. It's better to build lots of small things and learn things from doing that and solidify that learning by making something with it than go completely ambitious and something that you're never going to realistically be able to finish, right? Just lots of small little projects, right? Maybe make a simple snake game in with Canvas or something like that, right? But yeah, I would say using React for it's completely fine, but try and use a slightly different spin on it from maybe what you've done previously. Maybe bringing React styling or something like that. Or maybe you want to. What we've noticed is the last 3 weeks, the number of jobs going up each week it's been about two a week, so it has been a little bit slower. It's not been a lot slower. We have been speaking to companies. What we did notice, unfortunately, is that a lot of companies that were hiring when the lockdown happened, they did just put a pause on hiring because they weren't in a position where they were ready or able to continue that hiring process remotely. Some of those companies have since come back, but stuff is currently going on on the board. It is a bit of an interesting mix. We are noticing as well as full-time roles. We have seen a couple of companies asking for fixed-term contracts with freelance. So it's an interesting mix. I think what some companies are looking for at the moment is, well, starting people remotely. Um, let's see coming out the other side of this, how much work there is for that person, if it's been a good fit, and then, we can look at renegotiating a contract in a more permanent capacity afterwards. But yeah, stuff has still been going on the board. Yeah. I mean, we are, and a couple of times I have had to sort of encourage people to apply more to stuff because, yeah, we there is roles on there that we need more people applying to. So yeah, just because there is a lockdown, it doesn't mean companies aren't still hiring. The last thing you want to do is take your foot off the accelerator and not keep your portfolio up to date, not be applying to stuff. The same goes for stuff outside Northcoders as well. There is opportunities out there. You just need to obviously appreciate it is a slightly harder time, and you need to be on the lookout for this stuff as well. But yeah, stuff is going up, and yeah, interviews are still being organised. We had some tech tests submitted end of last week. Tote are looking to make some hires as well. We've obviously all heard from them. We've also got another role going on the board this week as well. Jake asks how often the jobs being posted on the board. Okay, so yeah, same difference. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the pain point we've had and I've experienced isn't the jobs going on the board. It's people being engaged and actually getting back to me and applying for stuff. That page, you keep regularly checking on the Slack, checking on that job board, and if you are interested in roles, letting us know, right? Um, Cool. Ben asks, when will employees start being contacted on our behalf about potential roles, and how? For generally about 4 or more job applications coming back, depending on how quickly they're coming back to us, the graduates, and then get them straight across to you. You know, time is of the essence with the stuff, right? You know, it's not just Northcoders graduates that'll be interviewing for these roles, right? So we generally aim to get you back within the next couple of days and your CVs across. Yeah, companies, it really depends on the business. We found obviously at the start of lockdown, things were understandably taking a little bit longer. Obviously over Easter, people had commitments like childcare, that sort of stuff that they had to attend to. But yeah, we will generally, if it's been more than a couple of days, start chasing organisations for feedback as well, because it's in their interest. At the end of the day, it's unlikely you're only speaking to one company. You know, if they do like you and they want the opportunity to offer, it's in their interest to move quickly, right? So, you know, one of the benefits of obviously working with the Northcoders careers team is we can do some of that chasing on your behalf, right? Gareth asks, how do we access the Trello board? Good question, Gareth. So once you've submitted CV, like we were saying before, if there's other people wanting to go across that role, they're not necessarily waiting for someone else who hasn't completed their CV or is what we call job ready, has those portfolio pieces on there as well. We got a bit of feedback from a company 3-4 weeks ago who were not very happy that the portfolio links that a student included on there weren't actually working. So yeah, we generally ask that the CV is ready and completed before we send it across to companies, because it's not a good look for anyone if it's not. What kind of things should we expect from tech tests? Interesting and good question. So generally front-end roles, it'll be more of a take-home test where they'll ask you to design a simple front end. It could be mobile, it could be browser-based, and do a design brief. So you may be giving brand guidelines, maybe giving some wireframes, and you'll probably have a few days to work on it. Full stack or back end roles, sometimes front end roles as well. You might be your entry terms with Northcoders. So yeah, it depends on the organisation. What we do is we keep information on the tech test. We'll obviously talk to the company about what they're looking for, what the structure of that interview process is, and we'll feed that back to you as you are working through those steps. But yeah, it depends on the company and what it is they're looking for from the business. Any more hiring partner presentations coming up? At this point, currently not, Nick. We don't have anything in the calendar, just purely because it's an interesting combination, I suppose, of trying to organise the getting it all set up and people's availability. You know, the fact is people are quite busy in the tech industry at the moment. I know a lot. You think working from home, you might have a lot more free time. If anything, certainly for me, and I think a lot of other people, like a lot of my friends who are developers, I know they're having to do everything they were doing before, but in addition, a lot of meetings on things like Zoom, Google, Microsoft Teams, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's tricky with timing, but there is roles, like I said, coming up on the board. Chippy Malasse asks, are we able to send you our CVs to look over once we've followed this advice? Yes, of course. What we'll do is you will send across your CVs to us in your personal graduation channels in the Northcoders career workspace. We'll give you feedback on them. You know, we want something that is as close to finished product as possible. You know, when you do send it across to us, you know, we'll think for a second. There's 20 people currently in project phase. If each CV takes 10 minutes to read and then 20 minutes to have a call with that person, 30 minutes for 20 people, it's like 10 hours, right? Like it takes a lot of time to do the CV feedback and stuff. So we do ask whatever you do send across to us is something that you're proud of and something that, you know, as far as you're concerned is the finished article. There's nothing wrong with asking us for advice while you're writing it, but, you know, send something across to us that you are confident is close to the finished article. Jasmine asks, where do most grads find their jobs, i.e. through LinkedIn jobs boards or Northcoders? It's a bit of a mix. What I would suggest the best thing to do is, if you are going to look for roles directly yourself, approach companies directly, maybe companies you know people at, right? You know, half the people that do Northcoders are referrals from other people that are developers. leverage your network, people that you know. Have a look at what Northcoders graduates are doing currently. So where they're at now, you have testimonials on our website. You have LinkedIn. You can look at people's past companies and set that to Northcoders. You're going to be so much better off, especially in this current market, uh, going directly to companies rather than job boards. I can guarantee if you look on Indeed now, 90% of the jobs on there will be recruitment agencies saying they have an exciting, disruptive startup that's really well funded. Unfortunately, a lot of those are fake. I've worked in the recruitment industry myself. I've worked in various sales roles before doing North Coast myself. A lot of those roles are not real. Unfortunately, you can be sure in this market where companies are trying to keep spending as low as possible, they're not going to be paying recruitment fees at this point in time. So the best thing you can do is look at companies that you think are interesting, companies you're passionate about. Maybe they're in an industry or a sector that you are knowledgeable about, or you're really interested in getting involved in, and yeah, apply directly to them. A lot of these companies will have careers portals on their website. Get in touch with them, and yeah, submit your CV if they're not someone we already work with. Um, yeah, yeah. Have a look on. There's places like websites like news aggregators like Prolific North, um, tech publications online. You've got Manchester Evening News, other places like that. Have a look at what companies are maybe hosting webinars, virtual meetups and stuff. Like, there's a good chance if a company is hosting or organising like a massive Zoom meeting on Meetup and going to all the effort to do something like that, well, odds are it's probably because they're trying to hire people, right? So yeah, just keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world at the moment. Be it wherever you're based, could be Manchester, Leeds. Give me some feedback. You've implemented that feedback. Send us that new CV. We will then organise a time with you to just do a quick call and just get to know you a little bit better. So what is you're looking for in a role, your previous experience, where you're based, what you're looking for, maybe what, just as importantly, what you're not looking for in a role. And yeah, we can obviously use that information to point you towards specific roles and yeah, help you hopefully find something that's going to be a great fit for you. How much do hiring partners interviews question candidates on specific code in a project? I think I understand what you're saying here, Ricky, in terms of maybe like project phase, what you did. At the end of the day, I think what they're most interested in is learning about what you learned during that project. So what you maybe find difficult, how you overcame in what you do and don't know. It's okay to ask people to repeat questions or give examples of things as well. And yeah, really just sort of understand what they're asking. People are probably more interested to understand, your fundamental understanding of, how would you interact with an API, or how would you, send a certain type of request to put some information or a data value in a database. So like high level concepts rather than specifics of your code. Maybe what some differences between OOP and functional are, or that sort of stuff. So it's all stuff that you've done on the course before. I did actually have a list of questions. I'll pull some of them up for you, okay? Example test questions. Yeah, cool. I'll send them across in addition with that sample CV we spoke about in the channel. Is there a time frame on the sports provided that I will continue post-graduation? Basically, haven't done my project site. Yeah, Gareth. The support lasts as long as you keep in touch with us and keep engaged, right? As long as you are updating your CV, you're getting in touch with us to say you'd like to apply for jobs on the board, we'll be there to support you. It doesn't stop at any time. We will help people with first jobs, or maybe if something happens where the company they're working for goes under. It has happened a couple of times. We will support you. But yeah, as long as it takes you to get that first job and you are engaged with us, we'll be around to help you with it. Cool. Any more questions before we wrap up? Yeah, cool. So as Johnny mentioned, unfortunately we weren't able to get numbers together for the TOE project. It's totally fine. Obviously I appreciate it's not for everyone. It would be great to just hear a little bit of feedback from yourselves about what it was that you weren't keen about that project. So if it was the company, if it was the location, if it was a project itself, it's really valuable for us, and obviously helps us make sure that any projects companies do want to work with us on in project phase are things you're going to be interested and excited to do, right? Because that's what we all want to do in project phase. So yeah, if people could just sort of message me and maybe just say why they decided it wasn't right for them, or why they decided to work on something of their own. Again, I totally get it; it's fine. But yeah, just if we could just have some specific feedback, specific feedback about why people chose not to work on that project, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Um, cool. So as I mentioned before, I'm sure I'll get to all know you much better over the next couple of weeks, doing things like CV reviews, all that sort of good stuff. If anyone does have any questions specifically to maybe their career history, experience, education, anything like that they want to talk about, but maybe don't want to talk about in the chat here, feel free to drop me a direct message. I'll be happy to chat to you on Slack about it, or alternatively organise a call and we can go for it in a little bit more detail. Okay. Perfect. Cool. Just give it another few seconds so if people can ask any last moment questions, and yeah, no, I think we'll wrap up. So, like I said, I'm going to include the sample CV, the Northcoders one, in the project channel. I'll try and dig up those example tech test questions. So, not so much tech test, but more sort of like the sort of questions you might get asked in an interview. And drop them in there as well. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for your time, everyone. It was nice chatting to you, and yeah, I look forward to getting to know you all a little bit better going forwards. Cheers. All right, everyone. Bye now.